Ladies and gentlemen, many of you who have clicked on this video have played at least one chess game in your life. And there is nothing quite as sweet as winning a game of chess. All of us have a certain elo, and when we are able to outplay somebody of a similar strength and play a good game, it feels really nice. That's all to say that today, Magnus Carlsen, in a tournament in his home country of Norway, played one of his best games of the year. Nearly 100% accurate. As far as I'm concerned, 100% accurate. And I'll be sharing it with you in this video. And as a dessert, I will also give you some other games from that event. I am currently obviously not home, and you will have to deal with my hotel setup, but it should sound good. I should look fantastic, and I'm sure you do as well. On that note, we had Gukesh versus Fabiano. We also had Hikaru versus Wei Yi. But this is what happens when Magnus Carlsen plays a perfect game of chess. His opponent, Arjun Erigaisi, young, talented player. Young, I mean, dude's like 21. I mean, he's like a dinosaur at this point, but talented player from India. Magnus opened the game with the move c4, trying to go for an English. Black has many setups at the highest level. Playing c4, e5 is one of the most enterprising and interesting options. Erigaisi, though, is like, I'm going to copy you. This is one of the ways you can play against somebody if you really want to bore them to death and make them hate you. The symmetrical English is one of the most solid, one of the most boring systems in the game of chess. And when I say symmetrical, I literally mean in this position you can go, I'm going to copy you. You moved your bishop, and I'm also going to move my bishop. And then when you move your knight, I'm also going to move my knight. And then, you know, you can move the knight, and then I'm going to move the knight, and then I'm going to castle, and then actually I'm going to Well, what Magnus plays here is actually kind of hilarious. One of the ways I like to play this position, and I have an English course on Chessly, my educational platform, I like to play d3 and queen d2. I like to bring my queen up, and I like to put my bishop over here. Magnus here plays rook b1, which is not a meme that is for, you know, that is featured very often on this channel. This is an ancient Gotham meme. Rook b1, if one of you played, I would slap you. Rook b1 is... But rook b1 has a couple of ideas. The idea is to get off of this diagonal. The idea is to play a3, b4. And the other idea of rook b1 is the shock value. To play rook b1 in 25 seconds, you know, Erigaisi could have played rook b8, you know. I mean, Magnus is basically telling him, hey, you want to copy me every single move, bozo. Play rook b8 too. By the way, it's like not even that stupid of a move. But yeah, Erigaisi can't. He plays knight f6. He spends 5 minutes actually playing knight f6. And actually already Magnus has a big psychological victory here. Because the guy clearly showed up to copy him. And now he's not going to be able to do so. I'm like 90% joking and 10% maybe that actually is annoying if you're playing with the black pieces. Now, Erigaisi, seeing that b4 is on the way, commits this pawn to a5, but now we have pure asymmetry. We have the b5 square, which is very, very juicy. The c-pawn and the knight can go there. The c-pawn can't just go there. The knight can. The c-pawn has to take something on that square. But already we have a lot of imbalance being created. Magnus is not going to play e3, right? We have a lot of different pawns standing on a lot of different squares. Rook b1 now kind of looks a little stupid because you're not going to be able to play b4, but you got black to overcommit to playing these two moves. And now Magnus develops the knight to f3. Every move, he's spending some 7 minutes, you know, coming up with different strategies. Like, yeah, I think here he spent 13 minutes and ended up going for d3. And then he spent some more time to play knight f3, and then he played bishop e3. He's actually spending a lot of time, d3, knight f3, bishop e3, which is really fascinating, you know. To see Magnus spend so much time in the opening, not just like showing up to the game and memorizing things, taking a very unique approach. The bishop in front of the pawns, this bishop over here, maybe d4, maybe b4, knight b5 are ideas for white. White needs to expand. White hasn't traded anything. Black goes queen e7, and now knight a4. So immediately Magnus targets this pawn, and black has to defend it. Black has only one move here that doesn't lose everything, which is the move pawn to d6. And I think this is almost a nice little mini victory for white, because black is sort of passive. You know, black is not really able to play d5, e5, activate with space in the center of the board. And now Magnus castles and says, I think I have a great position, and black goes rook b8. Rook b8 stops the white knight from going to b6, at least targeting the knight. You can still go knight b6 and take the bishop, although the bishop is a bit of a strange piece. Black also has a long-term idea to potentially secure his knight and then play the move b5 as well. And on top of that, you are just always off of this diagonal. And now Magnus plays the move d4. According to the computer, at a very, very, very high amount of depth, it thinks d4 is inaccurate. And this is the moment of the game where I said Magnus played basically at 100% accuracy, but according to Stockfish, d4, like if black was Stockfish, it could do anything it wanted to Magnus. All right, it could put Magnus on a fishing pole. Like it's not the same. But the computer is unimpressed with the move b4 because it just wants to play b6 and be completely solid, and basically just say, I actually think that, you know, you're not doing so great. From a human perspective, this move makes tons of sense because it's not easy for black to make a move. You know, you forced your opponent to play passively. Now black has to respond. He takes on d4. Now, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that from this point forward, Magnus plays a completely perfect human game of chess. Like, it's astounding, actually, how effortless he makes this. Like, I'm going to try to break this down for you in a way that is easy to understand. So first things first. With this pawn trade, white traded and got a knight into the middle of the board. This trade benefits white because now white has a very active bishop on the diagonal, and also because white is going to have the active queen. However, black traded a c-pawn, which is a flank pawn, for white's d-pawn, which is a center pawn. So traditional wisdom tells you having two center pawns is better than having one center pawn, but not when both center pawns are blocking both of your pieces. So actually this trade is better for white. Knight takes, both queen takes and bishop takes are fine, but bishop takes is better, which obviously Magnus plays. And black now has to do something. Has to. But it's not easy. White has a very simple threat. Kind of a hilarious threat, actually. The threat is like bishop b6. And targeting this pawn. And then maybe c5. But the other threat is like knight here. And potentially just grabbing the bishop in the long run and having the bishop pair. Just like pure restricting and going after this pawn. Very simple plan. So Erigaisi doesn't need 2 invitations to go out to dance. He plays b5. All right, my man is going to the nightclub as we speak. He breaks out of the position. He's not going to let Magnus bully him. Magnus takes. Now, I would like to draw your attention to something. What these two trades just did, pawn to d4 and pawn to b5. Black has begun losing c and b pawns. So Magnus has what we call a pawn majority on the queen side. He has a 2-on-1. In the long run, that could play a role. And by that could play a role, I mean it literally does, because this dude is the best chess player who has probably ever walked the earth, although he is still building his legacy. Like, none of us, not me, not you and me combined, not me on the phone with somebody who is reading Stockfish lines, would not be able to do what you're about to see. So we bring the knight back from the edge of the board to target the rook, and the rook goes back. Now what do? How do we make progress from this position? Okay, easy. We just bring the queen out to the edge of the board. Straightforward. That's a weakness. Of course, we have to target it. Erigaisi now does something very interesting. He plays bishop to b7. This is actually a brilliant move. Erigaisi decides, I'm not going to play passively. He can play moves like queen d8, queen c7, hang on to this pawn. It's futile. It's futile. White will win the pawn in the long run. Erigaisi now begins to trade off Magnus's most powerful piece and create counterplay. He's going to create counterplay in the center with his 2 center pawns, and then against the queenside attack of Magnus. So now that your opponent, who's a top 5 player in the world, is putting up the maximum level of resistance, what are you going to do in the position? How are you actually going to win this game? Okay, easy. We're going to trade the bishop, we're going to take the pawn, and we're going to go, Arjun, show me. Show me what you got. Arjun can't just sit and let himself get stomped, right? White is just going to push these pawns and black is going to lose. You're going to have to sacrifice material for them. Erigaisi plays e5, that's the best move. Erigaisi plays d5, that's the best move. You now start kicking out the white pieces. d4, etc. Rook is going to come to the party, knight is going to join as well, before Magnus is going to be able to push any of these pawns. And now Magnus dodges the punches. I mean, I'm talking like pure matrix. I'm talking, you know, Muhammad Ali rope-a-dope, like the pawns are coming. We zip out with the bishop this way because the idea is to target the knight, which will destabilize the center. When Erigaisi continues marching forward, which is the best move, we chop down the knight before he's able to kick us out of the position, and now we secure the control with the move knight d5. Look at this. how we got out of the way. I mean, it's literally how you react to boxing. You get out of the way, and now the knight comes into d5. So we've traded off one of the opponent's active pieces, and we have these two. If we get to any pawn endgame, any rook endgame, any knight versus bishop endgame, it's winning for white. The pressure is all on Erigaisi. Erigaisi puts the bishop on the g5 square. Magnus plays knight b4. Why does he play knight b4? Because he wants to be able to move his rook. That's really the simple reason. And there's also an attack over here. So he was not able to move so easily. He creates this attack. He blocks the queen and the rook's vision over here, and he forces the next sequence of moves. If you look at the top line of the computer, it's hovering around 0.3. Watch. The bishop comes into d2. If you didn't do that, if you played something like a rook e8, white would very, very quickly generate massive, massive counterattacking chances. Like, you would probably start with rook fd1, and then you have ideas like f4 as well as knight to d3. You can always try to trade the queen as well, and that's why we have to do something like this, which is more active. Takes, rook d1, rook e8. We come back to the f4 square. Erigaisi wins the pawn on e2. We win the pawn on d4. That was the best sequence of moves. So from a position like this, yes, we go back to move 11. Magnus trades the pawn, activates his pieces, targets the pawn, targets that pawn. Erigaisi plays the best way, but the best way is going to be down a pawn. And guess what happens in the endgame when you're down a pawn against Magnus Carlsen? You get to an endgame where you're down a pawn against Magnus Carlsen. Queen b7 turns out to be the wrong move. I can't explain this to you. Stockfish here wants you to stay more active, wants you to restrict white a little bit more, but that would allow the white rook to get to the 7th rank. Queen and rook endgames like this are some of the most mysterious in chess. They don't particularly make any sense. They're very, very difficult to navigate, except for one man, and his initials are MC. All right? Please, enjoy. Queen f6. The first thing that we do is we restrict the black king, right? Over here. h4, h5, this type of stuff is possible. We also have counterattacking chance. We have maybe a rook d8 when we want it. Now, in an endgame like this, you have to think about the correct way to simplify. Again, if you end up in a king and pawn endgame, you lose with black. White just advances the b pawn. You go win it. This king runs over here. In other situations, you can trade the rooks. You can trade the queens. Maybe black survives, but it's not particularly great. Erigaisi kicks out the queen. That turns out to be a mistake. Magnus immediately, in 21 seconds, Erigaisi spent 15 minutes to play this move. Magnus, with 42 minutes on the clock, knows this is the best move, trades off one of the defensive layers of the black position, re-centralizes the queen with a check, and plays b4. That sequence of moves that I just showed you, look at the times. Can you see the times? This was 21 seconds, 7 seconds, 24 seconds, and 2.5 minutes. Centralizing the queen and removing one of your opponent's defenses is the way you win one of these queen and rook endgames. And now he's going to push this pawn. And here is the most important final remaining moment of this endgame. Again, the computer wants the pawn to advance as much as possible, which is very difficult to do with black because soon you run out of space. Erigaisi says, I'm going to block the pawn, obviously, because then white is not going to advance, and then I'm going to move my queen out of the way, and then I'm going to create a blockade. Yeah, Magnus immediately, within 5 minutes thinking, 29-7 on the clock says, you can have the pawn. I'm now going rook e8. And guess what? When you try to stop me, I'm not going queen d7 to set up rook e8. No. I'm going rook e8. He forcefully trades the rooks off the board once, and now he trades the rook for the other one because he knows that a queen on 4 versus queen on 3 endgame with a pawn this far is winning. And do you know why it's winning? It's winning because the king goes for a walk. Magnus goes king f1, king e1, king e2, king e3, e4, e5. This is how the game ended. It's like a movie. The king marches to the opposite side of the board, and Arjun Erigaisi resigns. This dude wins games like an actual movie. Like, what? His opponent is 2780 FIDE, top 5 in the world. Magnus won this game the way I beat 2,500 rated players in Blitz. Like, and I'm 2750 in blitz. I mean, it just doesn't even. There was, and I am not exaggerating. There was not a single thing Erigaisi could have done in this game. Not a single. He could have not shown up. Like, he could have maybe just sat at home, and it would have just been a forfeit win. Dude, Arjun played his best game, but when Magnus plays this well, there's nothing you can do. There was nothing. I don't know what Arjun could have done differently. Like, there are chess games, you lose and you go, I literally played the best moves that I could have possibly played. Magnus was just on another level today. And that's 2 classical wins in the tournament for him. And he is now making a run for first place. Now I have more games. As always, I have more games. I have Hikaru versus Wei Yi. Hikaru lost to Gukesh after beating Magnus. So everybody in this tournament has beaten everybody. Wei Yi just beat Magnus in an Armageddon. In this game, Hikaru went also for a Catalan. We saw Wei Yi yesterday play into a Catalan. And after castles, d takes c4 was played. This time, Hikaru plays knight c3, which is possible. And then in this position, you immediately go and you try to win this pawn back with the knight. But in this game, Wei Yi played a completely normal line, and Hikaru tried to put some pressure. And we got out of the opening, in a pretty normal Catalan-style position, where Hikaru tried to apply pressure. By the way, just like the Magnus game, right? The bishop here, these kinds of positions. But from the opening, Black had like no problems. I mean, if anything, it was actually Wei Yi who had deeper preparation and maybe even deeper understanding. And from the opening, he was just doing great. Like, his pieces were more active. You didn't really feel the essence of the Catalan style pressure like you normally feel. And I think, yeah, like, clearly with the doubled pawns, White's position doesn't make a strong impression. As far as winning this position, the computer is saying it's 0.4. I wouldn't be so confident, but look at Wei's position. I mean, the rooks are very powerful, right? He repositions the knight, and they trade the rooks. Wei Yi ends up winning a pawn, but White has the bishops. The bishops are very strong, and there is something to be said that you can be down a pawn in a bishop and knight endgame versus 2 bishops, and you can actually still be okay. You have to know how to simplify these, just like the Magnus game. Opposite colored bishops, significantly increase your drawing chances. None of that really matters. It's impossible to win this with Black because White's bishops are so powerful. This went on for some 50 moves, I believe, if not 60 moves, 57 moves, and the players agreed to a draw. Now, in this tournament, there is an Armageddon format, which is if the players agree to a draw, they have to play with the same colors, except Black gets draw odds and White gets 10 minutes versus 7. But I just have to say, Wei Yi has played unbelievable. Like, Wei Yi has had some great games, and now he plays Hikaru in an Armageddon, right? So he starts the game with 3 minutes down, but a draw is good enough for a win. And he plays in a similar way like he did against Magnus. He puts the bishop on g7, very easy games. Wei Yi, low-key, is one of the best blitz and rapid players in the world, rapid and blitz players in the world. You haven't heard of him much because he was in university, actually, but like, he's like a part-time chess 2780. It's kind of crazy. In this game, Hikaru, trying to take his opponent into unorthodox territory. Wei Yi playing in a very provocative way, giving up a pawn. I would even argue this is Hikaru being provocative, but Hikaru can take the pawn on c6. He doesn't, though. And Wei Yi just gets a great position. I mean, Black is just doing great here. Like, everything is active. Everything is on a good square. I don't know how White is going to win this position, right? Hikaru's going to try, but I'm really not sure how you're going to do it. And now Wei Yi gives up the pawn on the A file, and here come the rooks. Hikaru tries to strike back in the center because his alternatives are not particularly appealing. Like, if you don't play the move f4 with White, you don't have much. And in the future, Black will just come around this way, probably bring the rooks as well, and have a really, really good position. Hikaru goes here, rolls the dice, 7 minutes versus 3. You would think, Wei Yi, he doesn't have a lot of time. He's going to panic. He's going to do something silly. 2 minutes, 48 seconds versus 6:51. Hikaru looking for complications. E5. Wei Yi has 2 to 6:40. It's completely crazy. He doesn't have enough time. And yet, with less than 2 minutes on the clock, he manages to get a completely reasonable position. And he's down 4 minutes. He's down. He has 1 minute to 5:39. That is the time odds that he is giving Hikaru, and yet he manages to trade off everything into a position he has no business losing. You cannot lose this position with black. He has 30 seconds on the clock. He just needs to get to the cutoff where there's a little, I think they get 1 second of bonus time. And ultimately what happens is Wei Yi forces a draw against Hikaru. Here he could have played for more. I mean, he could have played, you know, Rook A2 and tried to play for a win, and he is winning. But he just forces a draw and beats Hikaru in the Armageddon. So Wei Yi has beaten Magnus and Hikaru back-to-back in Armageddon games. It's epic, epic stuff. I have more chess for you. Gukesh versus Fabiano. Then we have Lei versus Sarakadam. We have Ju Wenjun versus Hampi Konaru. And we have Vaishali versus Muzichuk. So Gukesh, Fabiano, this is a candidates matchup. This is an Olympic matchup. These guys have been playing each other a lot over the last few years. And in this game, Gukesh plays this move H3, which from this position has been played less than 0.1% of the time. Like in the Chess Masters database, the moves Queen C2, Bishop D3, Bishop E2, B3, A3, C takes D5, Bishop D2, Knight E5, A4, Queen B3 have all been played more often than the move H3. And already from the opening, we get something that, you know, has been seen maybe once ever. In these positions, in the semi-Slav defense, which is what Fabiano is playing, black wants to play on the queen side. He wants to play with b4, he wants to play with c5, etc. Gukesh sacrifices a pawn. Kind of. Like, there are some positions where sacrifices, not quite the right word. I think my brain skipped ahead in a thought. There are some positions in Queen's Gambit accepted where black takes on d4 and white doesn't even take back sometimes. White just sort of fully invests in this pawn. That's what I meant to say. In this position, Gukesh is not sacrificing a pawn, obviously, because he can just take it back immediately, but he still has the same ideas from the Queen's Gambit accepted where he wants to get the pawn to the e5 square and he potentially wants to generate some attack onto black. So we're going to see that. No, we're not. Because Fabiano plays e5, he gets in the way of this plan, and despite Gukesh having excellent opening preparation, Fabiano very quickly grabs a pawn and stabilizes the position. Now, Gukesh will still continue to ask some questions. He does have the bishop pair, but Fabiano in this game is going to... Oh, maybe Fabiano's actually not going to just equalize. Fabiano's going to start taking over the game. And that's exactly what happens. Knight d e4, Fabi's like, hey man, you gave me a pawn. It's not like that Hikaru game where it's just an endgame. I have a lot more pieces on the board. Instructive, by the way. And the players shuffled for a long time, and Fabi looked for a breakthrough. He couldn't quite find anything. But the game plan against Gukesh, especially in the Magnus game, was get him low on time. Maybe something good will happen, although he still played very well. Black is still up a pawn. He's still trying to convert this, and he begins converting it. As the players' time ticks lower, they both get under 10 minutes, 6 minutes now apiece. Fabi making great progress in the position, right? Look at this. Gukesh is going to have to take the pawn back, but Fabi's bringing the knight back, and the rook is just insanely powerful. The knight is going to g6 and h4. Gukesh is on the ropes. Fabi is showing why he has won so many classical games in this tournament and in his career. And before you know it, Gukesh is losing. But he's losing for one of the most insane reasons I've ever seen. Basically, white can't move. White doesn't have a move in the position. And if Fabiano here, he doesn't, he traded the queen. But if he plays here, and white plays queen e3, Fabiano wins the game by literally just doing nothing. King to g8. White doesn't have a move. White cannot move the rook, the bishop, the queen, the knight, or any of the pawns. If you take this, of course, this is winning for black. Black's pawn gets all the way down. Black is going to end up promoting, so you can't do that. But if you move the rook anywhere, like e2, rook takes c1 check. The queen is pinned to the king, so you can't do that. If you move the knight back to f1, you hang the pawn on e4. Okay, so we can't move the knight. If you trade the queen, yeah, good luck doing that, because if you play queen b3, you lose your bishop. So you can't move literally any piece. If you move the king to h2 or h1, you lose the rook. If you move the king to f1, queen d1, and you lose the bishop. I've never seen something like this. Fabiano Caruana could have played queen d4 and king g8, and white would have been literally out of moves. But instead, he trades. And before you know it, a lot of the advantage actually dissipates. Gukesh fights back very, very valiantly. He's really clutch, honestly, in a lot of game scenarios. And after some more shuffling, the players make a draw. That was a crazy, crazy, crazy turn of events. But Gukesh now moves on to play an Armageddon, right? Because that's what happens. If your opponent doesn't put you away, it's, you know, you survive, and now you get to play and you get to put the pressure instead of being the one subjected to the pressure. So 10 minutes for white, 7 minutes for black. You already know how this goes. Similar opening, by the way, to Hikaru versus Wei Yi, by the way. But this game, unlike Wei Yi, who played like h5, h4, etc., in this game, Gukesh played slowly, improved his position, and played bishop c3, queen b2, and began preparing something in the center. Began making slow improvements to the position. Knight is going to e4. White has ideas like f4, h3, and also d4. And that is exactly what Gukesh plays. Getting into a concrete fight and a mess against Gukesh is probably one of the worst things you can do. He is a sniper. He is really, really good. He's going to punish you. And suddenly black is just busted. I mean, d5 is incoming. The bishop and the queen are here. It's a really, really difficult position for black. Fabi tries to play like this. Gukesh plays d5, kicks out the bishop. Bishop to d3 is clinical because the queen is hanging. And when the queen moves, I think this is the worst pawn structure Fabiano Caruana has ever had in his life. Tripled isolated f-pawns, no g-pawns, no e-pawns, no d-pawns, no c-pawns. No pawns. No pawns. And this is easy for Gukesh. He's one of the best players in the world. He does it clean. He does it easy. Wins a pawn. Wins a second pawn. Defends everything. Walks the pawn straight down the board. Doesn't matter if you're Fabiano Caruana. I'm not sure Fabiano Caruana and Magnus combined while using Stockfish can save this position with black. Gukesh, clean rook d6. I mean, this dude is a man after my own heart. Rook d6 is a beautiful move. Ending it in style. Can't take it because you hang the rook. And Gukesh, after beating Hikaru, also beats Fabi in an Armageddon, although he beat Hikaru in Classical. So Gukesh is back, man. He's scoring points. He is scoring points. The standings for the men are all over the place. I mean, Wei Yi is making a comeback now. I'm not even sure who's in last. I'm not even sure. It could be. It might still be Wei Yi, but I mean, it's a mess. They are all so close together now. Big, 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 exciting game and plot twist of the round. Late Ting's, former challenger for the World Championship versus world number 24 in the women's ranking, Sarah Kadam, who I believe has had a struggle in this tournament. She's lost a few matchups. She lost the game in the Classical. This was an Italian. And over the course of this game, Lei showed why she is 25-50 FIDE and world number 2, I think, in the women's rankings. She played a fantastic game. She opened up the center. She controlled her opponent's counterplay. Her opponent played in a very aggressive way with g5, h6 in the Italian. And, you know, white just got a very nice advantage. Bishop takes, queen takes. She put the pressure, and she started a beautiful attack. I mean, like, look at white's position. This is up 30 minutes on the clock. Bishop takes, rook takes. And black was in trouble. I mean, black was under attack for most of this game. Queen c5 check was played, and very quickly, I mean, it looks like Lei should just be winning on the spot with like 7 or 8 different combinations. She could win in the endgame here if she trades the queens and goes rook e7. That's exact rook f7. And now there's ideas like rook e6. It's very difficult to protect this pawn. Rook e6, knight f8. You play like rook e8, and you win in the long run. Lei went here, just crushing. Like, rook, just perfect game. I mean, literally machine-like. You put the rook on b8, rook goes here, you play a5. Again, black just ends up having no moves. But slowly, Sarah got back in the game. Down on time, the underdog of the field with doubled A pawns and double G pawns, a miserable position, a position with white having no double pawns at all. Just a permanent advantage, just a very, very clean position. And suddenly the players both have 1:40 on the clock. Sarah activates the knight. The knight wasn't participating in the game whatsoever. So the knight gets activated. And now it's chaos. Because a few times in this game, Lei has the option to repeat moves. Look, she has the option to repeat the moves. Right? They're shuffling them. You could 3-10. She says, no, I'm 25-50. I'm a world title challenger. No chance. We're not making a draw. We're not making a draw. But you know what happens when you let a horse hang around the board too much? It kicks you in the face. And suddenly, Look at this move, a3. Trying, if pawn takes, rook takes, bishop. But still, it's a draw. This is a draw. Pawn takes and pawn takes is a draw. Trade everything. Lei was like, no, I'm playing for more. And she blunders. 56 moves of equal or better. You just blunder a combo backwards knight move. Lei is down a knight. She lost the bishop. She's down a knight. And Sarah Kadem keeps a pawn on the board because you need a pawn to promote it. King g6, rook b4, and she has 1 minute on the clock. Don't panic. Don't do anything crazy. Takes the pawn on g3. White can't move the rook because she's going to lose the pawn. The rook, the knight, and the king together win the game. Unbelievable. Underdog story. She wins the game. She beats 25-50. Amazing. That was out of nowhere. 2 other games were drawn. This is, of course, the marquee matchup, and then we also have Vaishali versus Anna Muzychuk. This one was insane. Vaishali has struggled, especially in their Armageddon, but she struggled. She had a crazy, heartbreaking first game. Their classical game was drawn. Their Armageddon was a Catalan, and in this game, for like the first 25 moves, Muzychuk was showing, again, her class, just like Lei Tingjie was showing. You know, Vaishali allowed her opponent to catch up on time. And before you knew it, Muzychuk just pushed the pieces back, and it's just an avalanche now. King g7, rook c8, and black got a totally winning position. Dominant. You can even push this pawn. But it's Armageddon. And somehow anything happens in Armageddon. And yet it got worse. In this position, it's -4. It's deeply, deeply -4. You could plop the rook down on c3, begin making trades and everything, but suddenly, Vaishali's back in the game. Rook c5, incredible move. You cannot take because knight e6. So e5, knight d3, and Vaishali going for counterplay, but with this little time on the clock, you know, any sort of counterplay against the king is good. Rook rook d4, but black is still winning. Black is still winning, but suddenly white is back in the game. Knight takes e5, but she doesn't play knight takes e5. But now white is completely back in the game because of queen c4 or knight e4. Fine, we just keep hanging around. We keep hanging around. But all of a sudden, Anna Muzychuk is winning again. But not for long. Rook f1 defending everything, and white begins counterplay of their own. Okay, Vaishali plays king f1. And then a few moves later, Muzychuk is completely winning again with the unbelievable bishop to e7. Finding this with 20 seconds doesn't even make sense. It's hard to even explain this move. Instead, we get queen a2. And the problem with queen a2 is, here comes queen b7. And now black has to play rook e7 and try to defend. And she doesn't. And she hangs mate in 1. Welcome to Armageddon. Not for everybody, not for the faint of heart. And Vaishali gets a much needed win in the Armageddon. Crazy. Checkmate in 1 blunder. That's how you know we're in the Armageddon. And that takes us to the marquee matchup between the 5-time world champion, Ju Wenjun, and the absolute legend, Hampi Kataru. This is also Armageddon. Their classical game was also a draw. We're seeing a lot of this kind of like double fianchetto, like slow, you know, your opponent is down 3 minutes, so you don't let them get an easy game. We saw Gukesh play it, right? We saw Hikaru play it, although Wei Yi did a fantastic job, and Wei Yi is really firing at all cylinders. In this game, Ju Wenjun has a winning idea here. Knight f6, king h8, and queen f5. Just incredible. This is mate. If you take bishop e4 as mate, disgusting. But if this, white has to come back, etc. But anyway, in the game we got f4 and the attack continued. And you're going to see as Ju Wenjun builds up a really powerful initiative. Bishop to e6 check. Bishop to f5 is mate. Just an incredible game. Bishop, everything is falling apart. Black has to go here. And this is picturesque. This is back-to-back knockouts for Ju Wenjun in Armageddon. Easy knockouts. Like, I mean, against Vaishali, she also had a very nice game. The standings in this tournament are crazy. So for the women, it's Anna and Hampi tied with 7. It's Ju Wenjun and Sarah Kadam now up there. 3.5 for Vaishali, but 1 win and you're in 2nd place. And for the men, I was like, who's in last place? It is Wei Yi, but it's very close. The Indian guys are there, but again, 1 classical win and you're in 1st. And Magnus is in 1st right now, then Fabi, then Hikaru. The old dogs, man. The old dogs. The old dogs still in the top 3. Hope you enjoyed the video. Get out of here.